Hey guys, so I decided that I'm tomorrow going to post mostly a comparison of the 4 pressings of the Blue album that I own for Weezer, um, as an apology of not being able to get that fun facts video out, which hopefully I'll have out by next week. Yeah, it's just weird. But I feel like I need to kind of prefix it a little bit, and I really didn't know how I was going to go about this because I want to talk about hearing and how the just basic human physiology between a woman and a man might be slightly different, and especially because I know a lot of you are men in this hobby, and I mean very few women. So, and going off my analyst, you're either my age or a little bit older, so our hearing is going to be different. And I mean, obviously, if I'm saying that it's probably worth spending the money on a pressing, it may not be for you. So I just want to sort of talk about it without trying to like brag about my hearing, because I've done like these weird like online tests, and I do notice certain things that might actually mean that my ears are kind of more sensitive to things than before, and than other people's ears, and I will bring that up in this video as well. And I've always just I've been kind of curious this whole entire year just because of the beginning of the year. So let's sort of dig into this. So on average, a woman's hearing is going to start hearing like higher frequencies better than a man will, but saying that that's what starts to go when you start losing your hearing. So it's, we also tend to lose our hearing later than men would, and I mean, this is weird because it's just weird to think about that, and I do think part of it might be because of the possible jobs that men would have and what women would be doing, because men would be working in noisy places. And so I don't know if it's like an old-fashioned belief kind of thing, and men on average lose their hearing about the same time as women do kind of thing. So, you need to sort of think about that in a sense too. So I kind of have a little like checklist here. So as I said, female's hearing is going to be slightly different than a man's hearing. Not being sexist, is just science, And seeing how I'm like one of the few women in this hobby, and probably only few women that are going to be on YouTube talking about this hobby, I just wanted to come forth and say, when I'm doing my comparisons, you may want to keep in mind my hearing. Next, as I'm saying earlier, if there's any women that comment on my videos or anywhere, please make this a safe place for them. I mean, if you're going to treat me with any respect, treat my other followers that are women that are viewing my videos with the same respect. And I seriously doubt that most of you that have come onto my videos, and I may have met you in a Facebook group or something, so you treat me with respect on that group. You do listen to what I have to say, and you do think I am honestly kind of knowing what I talk about. So I think you will treat those women the same way you treat me, and that's what I expect out of anyone. And same goes for a woman. You can't expect equal rights and then be like, the other side doesn't matter anymore because it's more important. So I feel like all of you, just be kind to each other. I don't care if you're a female or a male, you just got to be kind to each other and treat each other with respect, please. But seeing how it's such a big thing that women aren't really normally treated with respect, it's a great feeling to see men do it, and when we get it. So it's appreciated. Thank you. Then next, we're going to get back on the subject here. So there is another sort of weird fact about my own hearing, is that I have ADHD. And ADHD and autism have some symptoms and some traits that like to overlap each other, which is a lot of mental illnesses do that. So it's just really hard for people to pick out what might be wrong with somebody. And I mean, the professionals are trained to do this, but they can also sort of, it's weird. Mental health is crazy. I mean, I've gone into it when I've gone down the rabbit hole with it when I was trying to come up with a better way of treating my ADHD. I don't want to do it in this video. It's going to be a long-ass video if I do that. So, but anyways, I'm going to be more sensitive to sound like an autistic person would be. And sometimes, I mean, not as bad as them. It's not like I can't handle the noise around me, that I'm incapacitated. I can. It's just there are some times where like growing up, the things that bothered me, I wouldn't actually thought they were out of the ordinary because it bothered everybody else, like a siren going by, that kind of thing. But the older I've gotten, the more I thought about these things. And it didn't actually happen until the start of this year, where my daughter was, we were working on not snapping at my daughter as much because she's a handful. I mean, I guess that's karma, I was a handful growing up. But yeah, we were finding ourselves snapping at her more and more, and it was getting out of hand to us even. So we were working on not snapping at her. And that's where I started thinking, it was like, why am I snapping at her, So is it because she actually is doing something bad? Is it because something kicks inside me that triggers it off? And literally, I just was sitting there thinking this, and we went on a car trip, and she wasn't really yelling in my ear, but it felt like she was, even though she was in the back seat. And I picked up on like the higher tones of her voice were just on the edge of triggering me to like fight or flight kind of deal. And I like invested in a pair of those loop earplugs, and I wore them the next car trip. It was just the most relaxing car trip I'd had with the family, because it was just easier to deal with the kids and deal with everything else. But it sucked because a lot of the music that we would listen to in the car, but it's like I had to sacrifice something to get that. And I'm getting better at like trying to not let that trigger happen without the plugs. So I was tired of sacrificing that with music. And so it's like it kind of brought home to me that maybe I am a bit more sensitive to like higher end of the frequencies, and that all those times where I'm being bothered by the sound and everybody else is being bothered by the sound is probably normal for me. However, maybe I was picking up on it a slight bit more than them, and it was more cringeworthy to me than them. But yeah, seeing how we lose our hearing as we get older. So the fact that that came up this year, I fixed it with the earplugs. I've always kind of been curious about my own hearing and such. And then I also think this sort of, unfortunately, once I've gotten into this hobby, has turned me into an audiophile because of that. So, blessing in disguise, you guys that don't have perfect hearing, is you don't have to go out and buy high-end stuff. And, and even if you do have perfect hearing and you don't care, you don't have to. But unfortunately, I do. So, unfortunately, it's going to be a bit more money for me in this hobby. And I'm trying to get over this perfection sound. I've got to find the perfection sound. And however, I'm probably going to get an EQ system for my system, because and I'll explain this a little bit later in this video, that today I've noticed something just because I was experimenting with an idea. So, and as I said earlier in the video, it's not that I'm trying to brag here, but going by some online tests, which don't replace a professional hearing test. And I mean, this is because I probably am not going to be able to get one myself unless there's an audible reason that the doctor feels like I need one. And this would be out of curiosity if I was to go get it professionally done. So, one, I did this like online hearing test where it was like from a hearing aid company, and it detected that I did not have any hearing loss. And then I did a few other things where it's like I could at least hear up to 20 kilohertz. And yet there was one that was like a graph where I kind of sat on like right in between the normal and above average type area. So I might be picking up a few more frequencies than a lot of people. And me and my husband had a chat about this as well, is that, you know, if I'm picking up at like 22 kilohertz, that's a CD. You know, I'm picking up what a CD can pick up. And so, you know, maybe it doesn't really matter that I want to go to vinyl because I can pick up what a CD does and all that. And I also want to sort of come back to my husband on this one. If I say anything that makes him look in a bad light, it's not. He is a shy person, and that's what is lovable about him. And he is socially awkward sometimes, and even with me, he is. So it's the delivery sometimes that I kind of have to keep in mind. But the man holds a master's in computer-aided engineering. He works as a programmer for a company here in Pittsburgh that does a sports camera. In fact, if you've watched any sports online and you've seen these awesome shots of a guy jumping over the pylon in football, that's their camera. I mean, this is how big this camera is getting at the moment and where it's going. And so, yeah, he's busy and he knows what he's talking about usually. So I'm usually to err on his side because, but yeah, I mean, it's like he has his education. I don't even have an undergrad degree, so it's weird. Yeah. So I tend to take his side usually because I'm like, he knows what he's talking about. But, you know, this is not, we're going to go back onto the subject, but I just wanted to sort of defend my husband from anything I might say to make him look bad. I mean, he's just socially awkward and shy. And I mean, I love the geek, you know, I love the geeky guy. Just because they were safe. I mean, I was picked on as a kid, so they were safe. So I always had a crush on the geeky guy, although the geeky guy didn't really want to talk to me. So, anyways, yeah, getting off that subject. But yeah, and then there was another test where it was like age your hearing, and I started picking up on like a buzzing feeling in my ear, but I couldn't hear anything, but I could feel it around the age of 10. And then where I started really hearing it was like age 15 to 20 area. So yeah, it's just, my hearing must be great, but I'm also kind of worried about that because there's the fact that I always think that things that are seen as blessings always end up being a curse in the end, because who knows when I start losing my hearing if it'll just tank, you know? So there's a lot of give and take on what's going to happen there. So just be happy that if you are losing your hearing, you're losing it slightly. I mean, I'm sorry that you're losing your hearing. I am, but, you know, there are some plus sides to that. Like, for instance, when I do ultrasonic record cleaning, I literally either have to go like to the third floor of my house because I'm doing it in the basement, or be outside of the house because I still hear the machine upstairs. And I mean, yeah, sound will carry pretty well from there, but I still hear that buzzing sound, and it's just, I've got to get away from it sometimes, and because I'm just sensitive to it, and you know, so you know, that's one pitfall for me. Another pitfall, if you want to look at it this way, is that when I've heard a spectacular pressing of an album, I can't unhear it. And if I hear anything else that's worse than it, for instance, the Weezer Blue album, there are some wonderful things about the pressings that I've got, but then there's also some horrible things about the pressings that I have. And in fact, one of those pressings, like I said earlier, I was doing a little experiment where I put my headphones on because I do have like an EQ, like a little 4-band EQ system in my headphones. And this particular pressing of the Blue album was weak. Like the highs are gone. They almost got swallowed up by the lows. And I was really curious about it because everybody else was saying how beautiful it sounded. And I'm like, okay, I mean, is it my system's just not good enough, or my system better than, I mean, does my system suck? What am I missing here? So, which I will also tell you my whole system in the Weezer video. So it really got me questioning things. And so I was looking up about the pressing, about the method that was done, pressed, and recorded. And I found out that the thing that I was hearing that was an issue for me was an inherent type sort of flaw that happens in the process of the pressing of the album, or recording of the album for the pressing. And so I got it in my head. I was like, well, I wonder if the details are still there. It's just not brought out as they should be. And so I decided to sort of EQ it a bit. And as I EQ'd it, I kind of got it pretty close to my favorite pressing out of the 4. So obviously I want to test out some other things just to sort of see what I'm thinking about. However, that's a lot of work. That's, you know, unless you're going to sit there and this is like your downtime to sit and listen to your record, you shouldn't have to EQ it. And if you do EQ it, you should know what you're doing. And the thing is, I'm not just talking about the little presets, the smiley face, you just tweak it. You know, you do. But the thing about EQ, the wonderful thing about it is you can tweak it however way you want it and get it to sound as well as it sounds to your ear that you like listening to it at. So it doesn't, those little presets, those little like, this is how you should be doing it, are just that, presets. It's like, this little preset is probably what's going to sound fairly well for pop music, for dance music, for rock. And really, sometimes it's not all the same, you know? So I'm looking into possibly getting another more band bands in an equalizer for my system, just because it just brought this out to me that maybe I do need to EQ it a bit, just based off my listening preferences. And but the only problem too with EQ is that there's only so far you can take it. If you have a pretty crappy produced album, and so forth and so on. For instance, like there's a live album I have that's from a Japanese pressing for the Beatles that was recorded in 1962. It was recorded on just like a little home, reel-to-reel recording type portable unit that somebody had when they were out on their little German club scene. And they used it to record themselves. So not only in this recording are you combating the chatter in the club that they're in, they were drowned out. So in production wise, they had to push the treble up to be able to sort of like bring the boys' voices back in, and just all sorts of trickery that had to take place. But with my EQ, I've been able to like EQ it enough that treble doesn't hurt my ears, and I'm able to bring out things that I wasn't hearing before. But that's another whole thing to talk about when it comes to like EQ. And I know a lot of audiophiles don't like EQ, but I honestly think you should take the time to deal with it, because yeah, you might get a little bit more noise, but honestly, I don't think you really have to worry about that unless you have a cable that's over 10 feet long. I mean, from my understanding is that it's that cable. Unless you're going to have a cable that's over 10 feet long, you may not have to worry that much about sound, no matter what you put into your system. But as I said, this is a very basic understanding that I have of it. I'm still reading up. And so yeah, but a lot of my assessment on my hearing right now is just based off of what has happened over this last year. And I mean, it's just really interesting. And it might just be that my more sensitive part of my hearing is going, and that's the reason why things are bugging me more. So I think I've gone through pretty much everything I have written down here. And except for the hearing aid test, I will link the YouTube test I know of that I'm talking about down below in the description. And, you know, like I said, this is not sort of me trying to brag and trying to be like, oh, this is, or my ear is a golden ear, because my ear isn't, you know. My ear is just what I want to hear, and I use EQ to get there sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that. However, I can say that it's really strange that there was an album that everybody else was like raving about, just saying how beautiful it sounded. And I've had this happen before. I've put it on my system, and I'm just like, it's just not doing it for me. And once again, you know, it's just, I guess it all just depends on hearing. But when I'm listening to a record, what I look for is being able to pick up on these little like nuancy type sound changes, and like the full body of a guitar. I like when it comes from the moment that person's finger or guitar pick hits the string and they strum it to the very end of that note, because you know as it falls off there's just different sounds to it, and it's like I want to hear all that, and there is sort of like I want to hear, like if I'm listening to a classical piece, I want to hear people's fingers on the keys. I want to hear somebody taking a breath, that kind of thing. I want that kind of quietness, which I have found in some records, but I also have a CD that has not been pressed to record that I can hear that on, and it's like my favorite CD of the piece that I have, or CD pressing CD too, you know, just I mean, that's one for digital, unfortunately, but like that's just me. And unfortunately that means that those pressings usually tend to cost a little bit more money, and I really have to pay attention to the producers when I'm buying things, if I'm spending a lot of money. And I really do have to think about my own experience, where everybody else might be saying it's fantastic, and I put it on my system and there's just no energy, no life to it. And that's the thing with me, is I feel like getting that full spectrum, even the high level frequencies, is like energy. And that, I mean, it brings energy to the human voice, it brings energy to everything. It just, because all that spectrum is there, and that's what I want to hear. And I've been able to find that in records without having to use EQ, but I've had to use EQ to bring it out. And so yeah, it's a weird game kind of thing. And let me see if there's anything else I wanted to say real quick. No, not really, other than the fact that because of my ADHD, let's say I was doing homework in a public place, and let's say it's math homework, and hate math homework. It's such a drag, right? No, I don't actually hate math. I actually kind of liked it when I was a returning student. I could do like intermediate algebra up to college algebra, and I was just stepping into like the pre-calculus type area when things kind of hit the fan. So, like, I would be sitting in a cafe or whatever, and if I was not by myself and nobody else was around, I'd be fine. Or if nobody else was in the cafe, I'd be fine. However, if it was crowded, or if there was even just one other person, and they were either sitting a table away from me or maybe slightly across the room from me, I would pick up on their conversation, and unfortunately, because my brain can't focus worth anything on this math homework, it decides it wants to listen to this conversation these people are having. And this is their personal conversation. I should not be listening in. So I started wearing my headphones and pumping that sound up and pumping that volume up, because I needed to drown out the noises around me to be able to focus on my homework. None alone, I would do it even when I wasn't doing homework, because I started feeling creepy about listening in to other people's conversations. And not only listening in, it's just not being able to unfocus it and focus on something else. So yeah, it was basically me going, I need to shut the world out, because unless they're going to talk to me for any reason, there's no reason for me to be hearing these people's conversation. And it's one of those things that also kind of sucks when I'm out with my family, because I have to find something to occupy me with the family. Otherwise, my mind's going to wander. And so yeah, blessing in disguise kind of thing, and curse altogether. But so this is just me saying that my hearing, where it's at, and I may be raving about oppressing, depending on the system you have, depending on your hearing, it's gonna be a weird give and take type thing. And I mean, I will try my best to sort of test my pressings out on like the LP60 I have, to sort of get a gauge of like the people that have the cheaper turntables, what you're going to be hearing. I am not going to be pulling out my Crosley. I don't want to scratch my records. Okay, guys, I'm not pulling out that Crosley. Or the little like suitcase thing. And I think we should not put a brand to those, because obviously Crosley doesn't deserve that. I've heard good things about some of their higher end turntables compared to those. So, but yeah, I'm going to try to sort of keep in mind what other people use, to the best of my ability. So, saying that, thank you for listening, and thank you to all the guys that actually are listening to me and think I have a good handle on what I'm talking about, because that's greatly appreciated, on the fact that I'm a girl. And and so yeah, it's great. And if you found this video interesting, or if you think that maybe I've gone too far down the rabbit hole, give me a like or a dislike. Let me know. And I'll gauge on what I make videos next time. But yeah, give me a like if you absolutely like the idea that I'm talking about this, and I'm making the fact that I'm not going to try to make assumptions that so forth and so on. And give me a subscribe if you like the channel. There are several videos that you can go through that can gauge what my channel is going to be about if you've just happened onto this. And if I haven't said so already in the video, my name is Katie, and I'm a 45-year-old woman, as you can see. So the fact that my hearing is as good as it is interesting, and so forth, so on. But my hearing's fully intact. So, but yeah, yeah, that sounded like bragging. I'm sorry, guys. Anyways, bye. I will see you tomorrow. I will have that comparison video out of the 4 pressings of the Weezer Blue album. And I'll also kind of direct you to another comparison that inspired me to do this too, because one, he has an album pressing a pressing of the album that I don't, and I think it's important that you guys also hear about. He also has clips in his video which I'm unable to do because I can't digitally record to my computer from my turntable yet. So until that happens, I may be sending you guys off to another comparison video when those things happen. But anyways, thank you. I appreciate you listening for the song. Bye.